welcome back to my channel. If you are new here and like the video, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. Thank you for watching.
With that being said, so sorry for the delay. I have been super sick, and whenever I get sick, it takes me down for a long time. While I'm still sick, my voice is almost back to normal, so I'm going to attempt to get this out as soon as possible. This is the BokuAkaKuroKen memory loss prank gone wrong, split into two different parts, and I can almost guarantee that you will not like me by the end of this first part. Anyways, enjoy. Akashi wasn't sure what he should do. It was just the same as Okawa. His time with his lovers were limited. He didn't have the comfort of having all three of his lovers in one place as often as Yamaguchi might have. So he treasured every moment. He didn't even want to do that prank, thinking it would almost definitely ruin the short time he had with them. He shook the thought and squeezed Kenma's hand tighter. It was winter break, and both Akashi and Bokuto were able to convince their families to let them go to Kenma and Kuro's home for the holidays. He wasn't even sure himself how he pulled it off, but he definitely wasn't going to question or complain. It was currently their second day together under the same roof, and right now, both setters were doing a quick run to the corner store to pick up some ingredients for lunch. It was a chilly day, so of course the two were bundled in many layers to beat the cold. He decided to forget the prank entirely, not wanting to ruin this or any other moment together. He glanced at his boyfriend, who was glued to his phone, typing vigorously with his other free hand. You see, just recently, they all finally convinced Kenma to start his own YouTube channel, where he mostly just streamed playing his games. In a short time he began the channel, his popularity spiked, more so than any of them had imagined. It was truly impressive. Akashi couldn't have been more prouder, and he was sure his boyfriends felt the same. Kenma was finally exiting his shell and sharing his own passion for games to the world. They soon learned that with all this extra attention, Kenma also got a lot of hate. Haters, trolls, it didn't matter. Akashi despised it all. What are you doing, love? It wasn't that he was being nosy and needed to know every single little thing about his life. He just wanted to make sure whatever it wasn't those haters. I'm just catching up on some messages. Nothing bad, right? He teasingly nudged his side, making the smaller giggle in a way that made the taller stomach do flips. No, I promise. Because I'm not sure if you know, but me and Bo know a great place to hide a body. Plus, you are acquainted with someone from the Russian mafia. Kashi! You didn't. Kenma had to stop walking and texting to make sure he didn't fall over from laughing so hard. After calming down, the Ravenet composed himself and placed a soft kiss on the latter's forehead. What was that for? Does there need to be a reason? He returned a bright smell that could light up the entire world. The world was so dark and gloomy before, nothing but dark abyss that made the void seem endless. Not just Kenma, but Bokuto and Kuro made such an impact in his life. He honestly couldn't imagine a world without them. Thinking about it now, he wondered how he went without them for so long. Come on, we should hurry and get back home. Home. he could get used to this. The two leaned into each other's touch and continued on home, not noticing the person lurking in the shadows, just waiting for the right time to attack. Come on, Bo! Kuro urged Shorter to move quicker, while they waited on the other two. Bokuto whined. No! It's so heavy! He pointed to the bag thrown over his shoulders filled with textbooks. You have the muscles of a god, yet you were complaining about a few textbooks? The owl's jaws dropped before he swung the bag over his shoulder and unzipped it. He pulled out a single textbook, yet it relieved much weight from his shoulders. The book was no joke. The textbook was thicker than Karasuno's captain's thighs. And that was saying a lot. Kuro took the textbook and gravity almost jerked his arm out of socket. Holy shit, are they trying to make this bulletproof? Must be. Bokuto spoke, shoving the book back into his bag before grabbing the Raven's boyfriend's hand and continued walking. Do you know when Ken and Keiji are coming back? Kuro glanced at his phone for new notifications, but saw nothing. They shouldn't be much longer. They last updated me saying they were leaving the store. Bokuto likely skipped. They weren't gone for long, but after being deprived of boyfriend time for so long, he was a mess. I'm going to call Ken. Kuro chuckled. Well, put it on speaker. Bokuto nodded, letting his phone ring before Kenma answered. Kenma frowned, seeing that someone was calling, taking his time interacting with his fans away from him, which, believe it or not, he actually enjoyed it. But that frown was immediately replaced with a cheeky smile that once again made Akashi malfunction once he saw that it was Bokuto that was calling. Hi, Bo! He picked up the phone before putting it on speaker and then speaking. Kenma! Hi, Bokuto-san. Why do you still call me that? He could practically hear the pout in his voice. He heard a loud laugh that he could distinguish as Kuro's. You know he's just teasing you. It's true. It's always fun to tease Bokuto as such, so whenever he does use Kotaro, it's special and he always ends up in a blushing mess. So not that I'm complaining, but we were only 2 minutes from the house. Well, we also had to run out to the library to pick up my rentals. We are also close to home. Well, then it shouldn't be much longer until we see each other. He stopped abruptly, feeling knots in his stomach jumbled together. He couldn't explain the feeling. It was like whenever lightning was about to strike nearby, the hairs on your arms would raise. While his hairs didn't raise, he felt this unexplainable, uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. Keiji, what's wrong? Before he could respond, he saw a blur of color dash towards him. Well, towards Kenma. Everything happened so fast. His instincts screamed at him. He shoved the smaller setter down onto the ground and felt a violent blow to the back of his head, with Kenma's piercing scream fading fast in the background. He fell onto his hands and knees, disoriented, blinking harshly, trying to fight back the darkness. He heard more muffled voices. That must have been his other two boyfriends on the phone. But nothing was clear. He felt Kemma throw himself on top of him, just barely getting both of them out of the way before whoever or whatever attacked them attacked again. He shook his hazy mind and grabbed the blonde's hand. Run! Akashi knew he was in no state to fight. The warm liquid running down the back of his neck told him so. After getting enough distance, the setter slumped onto the side of an old building in an alleyway, wheezing. Keiji! What's going on? Kemma pulled his forgotten phone from his pocket, switching the audio call to a video. Bokuto accepted it without hesitation and revealed his rather frantic look. Kemma was huffing for air as well, the shadows casting a dreary glare over his features. His own worried glance was shifted over towards Akashi, who was out of the latter's sight. Ken, what happened? I don't know. It all happened too fast to even register. He heard a quiet curse from the raven. Keiji? We were attacked. He croaked. What? Where are you? Kemma looked around his surroundings to find some sort of landmark when his own golden eyes connected with the man from before. To his own horror, he saw he had a smashed bottle of booze, held out like he was going for the kill. Keiji. He shook the taller, not once leaving the man's gaze, afraid that once he looked away, it would be too late. He could barely even muster that much. Akashi groaned before pulling himself up, seeing the threat. Shit. The way Kemma tilted his phone, pondering on his next move, both Bokuto and Kuro saw Akashi straining to stay awake, with crimson red steadily dripping from his head. The ace felt his throat swell up, gazing at the attacker that had a bloodthirsty look. Kemma wasn't a fighter. It wasn't that he was weak, it was simply he just didn't fight. Akashi could defend himself, but looking at how he was barely grasping onto consciousness, it wasn't an option. They couldn't fight. They were in danger. Not even the cold winter day could compare to the chills that the man gave the two setters. Kuro had to calm his raging adrenaline so that he could think with a clear mind. Keiji, can you move? His voice was dangerously quiet, like if he were to speak lower, his own rage would come through the phone and take down whoever was hurting his lovers. Between the four of them, Kuro was the most protective, with Akashi runner-up. So the fact that all he could do was watch this all unfold infuriated him even more. I think so. We are by that corner store. Are you close? Bokuto sounded eerily quiet. It was terrifying. His normal hyperactive behavior was nothing compared to this. Yeah. He was caught off with the man grabbing him by his blonde locks. He let out a strangled yelp. Akashi's haste was forgotten quickly, and he kicked the man by the back of his kneecap, causing him to grunt and let go. How could he be so careless? Since when was the man that close? They were back running through the alleyways with the attackers close behind their tails. The taller scoffed. Why is this guy so persistent? Come on! Kemma yanked on his lover's arm and turned out a corner, making the man in his drunken stupor crash into a wall. Akashi threw open the lid to an old dumpster. Immediately, the rotten smell of fish and dairy hit them too hard. It almost made him want to turn back. But the consistent throb in his head persuaded him that this was the only option. Kemma was barely able to reach to the top, so while trying to catch himself from stumbling, he hoisted the ladder up before getting it himself and slamming down the lid. With the lid closed, the putrid smell was trapped inside. The taller wasn't sure if it was because of his injury or the smell, but he felt like he was going to vomit. The nausea intensified when Kemma pressed his jacket onto the back of his head, sopping up the blood and putting pressure. He hissed in pain. I know, but you are already bleeding too much. He whispered in a hushed tone, scared to speak any louder. His eyes grew heavy. Really heavy. It felt like each eyelid weighed 1,000 pounds, each blink draining his energy. We're almost there. Akashi had long forgotten about the phone call, and honestly, the voice barely registered. Ken. The blonde met his deep blue eyes that stared into nothing with the light slowly fading. It might have been close to pitch black in there, but he knew. Keiji, don't you dare. You have to stay awake. He only responded with incoherent mumbles. Realizing it was no use, Kemma turned towards his other two boyfriends. Kuro, what do I do? What's going on? The setter looked at the captain, who was running quickly. He recognized one of the street signs from the background. He was close. I think he is losing consciousness. He heard a curse from the owl on the other line. Just do your best to keep him awake. We are almost there. He was cut off yet again, but this time it was from the man slamming his fist on the side of the dumpster. Kemma jumped so high, he almost screamed and hit his head on the top of the closed lid. Damn it! Where did that Kosume and that boy go? Kosume? His breath hitched. The setter normally went by Kenma, but there was only one way. Somebody knew that name. That was from his channel. He knew he had haters, but he never noticed that it was this bad. So bad that they were willing to hurt him. His eyes widened even more looking at Akashi. It was bad enough to hurt his lover. It was his fault. No. He gasped for air, suddenly finding the oxygen in the dumpster not enough. It's his fault. His Keiji was hurt because of him. He let out a quiet, strangled sob. At that moment, It felt like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. He wasn't strong enough. Not to protect Akashi or himself. He didn't know where to run. Where was his safe haven? He was crumbling down with no one to hold him up. He pulled Akashi's now limp body closer to him. He sunk down, feeling broken glass stick in between his ribs, but ignoring the pain. It was nothing compared to the agony that his lover was in. He didn't want to bear the weight. He wanted to go home. His safe, warm home that was his lover's arms. Kuro, Bokuto, and Akashi was his home. He cried into the damp raven locks of the setter, not knowing what he could do. He squeezed his eyes tightly, ignoring the putrid smell of mold, the pounding of fists against the metal, and the warm, sticky red liquid leaving his lover's body. Maybe if he did that, he could convince himself that it was all just a terrible nightmare, and he would wake up soon. But he never did. This wasn't a dream. This is reality. Please. This was the cruel reality. Just make it stop. As if some supreme being were listening, it did, while Akashi was still wounded, but the banging from outside stopped. Even more pleasing whenever he heard both Kuro and Bokuto's voices, and not just from the phone. Within mere seconds, the lid of the dumpster swung open. Kemma flinched, hiding the taller behind him in a protective manner, while trying to train his eyes to get used to the sudden bright light. Kenma! Sure enough, he saw the owl's head peek over the rim of the dumpster. Seeing that help finally arrived, he wanted to run into their arms and just sob, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not when Akashi needed him to stay strong. Kemma got up, wincing at the tiny shards of glass moving in his skin, before doing his best to push the setter up to where the ace could grab him, pull him out of this death trap. The smaller followed soon after, and saw the rooster pinning the drunk old man to the ground. Tetsu! Kuro's head shot towards the smaller, relieved to hear he's alright. It was whenever he looked over at Akashi, who was undoubtedly unconscious and injured, that made his rage blow over once more. But that small moment to check on his lovers was enough for the man to break free from Kuro's grip. After headbutting the captain in the chin, causing him to stumble backwards, the drunken man reached for a piece of carbon steel from his coat, the handle fitting perfectly in his gnarly grasp. It was a gun. Without a moment's hesitation, he caught the gun and aimed and shot it towards Kenma. The sound was deafening. It was what awoke Akashi. He felt his ears ringing and wasn't sure if it was the blood from his head or his eardrums that piled in his ears. Ever since Bokuto first stepped on the court, he knew where he belonged. Wing Spiker, it just became an added bonus that he was the ace and captain. While the setter might be the powerhouse for strategic skills, Spiker still had to be just as observant, if not more. That way, they could find a way against their opponents' blocks, and how to block their attacks. The owl might be everywhere as far as his emotions and attention span went, But once he was on the court, there was nothing that could stop him. It was just the same for his boyfriends. He knew each and every one of them could defend themselves if need be, but seeing two of his lovers resulted in blood and tears made him enraged. He had this longing to protect, and this way, he felt that he felt them. Even still, as he made it onto the site, he was in the zone. So he was the first to see the gun and was the first to act. Seeing that it was aimed towards Kemma, he was quick, although not quick enough. He jumped in front of Kenma, not having enough time to fully get out of the way himself. Ko! Kuro scrambled, pinning the man back down, and kicked the gun out of his reach. Kemma stared in horror. Akashi was still dazed, only feet from him, while Bokuto was still in front of him, covering his sight from both the man and what could be the most gruesome sight of his back where he was shot. The taller slumped into Kenma's embrace. Kenma, you need to call for an ambulance. Keiji needs help. What about you? The owl smiled. I'm fine. You were shot. His voice cracked despite his will. Just help him. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached for his phone for an ambulance, while police were already pulling in. They were able to take the man, so Koto wouldn't have to pin him down anymore, and turned towards his lovers. Kemma seemed terrified, but other than that, he wasn't injured. The smiler held the owl in his arms, sobbing. Tetsu, he was stuttering over his own words, not able to compose himself or get anything to come from his lips other than incoherent mumbles. I'm fine. He groaned after situating the book bag off of his shoulders. Wait. Don't tell me. Koda quickly unzipped the bag and reached in for the textbook from before and pulled it out. The bullet hadn't even went through half of the book. This thing is actually bulletproof? Bokuto laughed when the blonde setter slapped him for not telling him any sooner. It was more of the impact that took me out of commission. Kuro inspected his broad, muscular back. From the aces deltoid all the way down to his mid-spine area was already swelling and turning a deep purple and blue shade. Well, you definitely got hit, that's for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if you fractured something. Upon realizing that the owl wasn't fatally wounded like he thought, he turned to the Raven setter, who had Kemma already there removing his jacket from before, to let paramedics attend to his injury. Keiji! He grimaced at the loud sound, making the taller shoot a quick, much quieter apology. His deep, ocean blue eyes opened through his eyelids, taking in the blurry outline of the two Nekaba players in front of him. Bokuto was nowhere in sight, since he was also getting help from professionals. Yet, as he stared at the Raven and Blonde, he couldn't help but feel lost. Like there was something he should know or recognize, but it all came to a blank. He knew nothing. Who are you? Well, I did warn that you all would hate me by the end of this, But good news is that the next part will be the next part to this. Thank you for watching. As always, if you like to be kept up to date, check out any of my social medias. I hope that you all have a wonderful day or evening.